Ladies and gentlemen, if I can request everybody rises to greet the President, His Excellency Mokgweetsi Eric Keabetswe Masisi, to the room and to Australia. Well, good morning again, everybody. Welcome to Perth, Australia's mining capital. Before we start, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians on the land on which we're meeting today, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation. I wish to acknowledge their elders, past, present and emerging. My name is Bill Rappard. I'm convener of Africa Down Under, or ADU, and on behalf of my colleagues from Paydirt and Gold Mining Journal, a warm welcome to everyone here today. A very special welcome to our guest of honour, His Excellency Dr. Mokgweetsi Eric Keabetswe Masisi, President of Botswana, who I surely have the pleasure to and the privilege to introduce and to invite to the stage. A warm welcome also to the 4 Botswanan ministers who have accompanied the President on his visit to Australia, and also other members of the presidential delegation. I'd like to acknowledge the ministers who have travelled from other countries right across Africa, some travelling very long distances to be with us for ADU. Likewise to the ministers, the Australian government ministers who will be here with us this week and this morning, the Honourable Bill Johnston, Minister for Mines and Energy. I'd also like to acknowledge the Lord Mayor of Perth, Right Honourable Basil Zemplis, who is here with us this morning. To the Director Generals and leaders of government delegations, welcome to you and your colleagues. Likewise, I'd like to acknowledge the ambassadors and high commissioners from Africa and Australia who are here today, along with the consul generals from the USA and from other countries throughout Asia and Europe. And that's before I get to welcome the explorers and miners, without whom we would not be meeting today. For the last 20 years, we've met each year in Perth, ridden the highs and the lows of commodity cycles, the ups and downs in the financial sector, and COVID. And so today we're here at our 21st meeting, our 21st birthday party, with a near record attendance and a jam-packed program that will celebrate another raft of success stories from across the African continent. When we met for our first conference in 2003, we had an audience of about 80 people. And as a magazine company, we worked in the resources sector for many years, and we'd written stories about about exploration and mining companies who were making great discoveries and developing exciting projects across Africa, yet with little recognition from investors and the financial markets. So we set the course with ADU to invite leaders of Australian companies working in Africa and of African ministers to sit together on this stage so that together they could try and demystify the notion that doing business was risky and dangerous in Africa. As importantly, to provide a platform for companies and governments to showcase some of these stories of success and the fact there were many attractive investment destinations across the continent. As importantly was to try and get the point across that Africa was not just one country, it was 54. So from humble beginnings, ADU developed and grew and became a truly international event, second only in size to the mining Indaba in Cape Town. As well as presenting success stories each year, we've also started to use the forum for discussion on issues that mattered to the industry. Mining regulation, ESG, Ebola, and security have all been part of the ADU agenda from our earliest days. As we embark on the 21st century of ADU, or the 21st edition of ADU, I should say, I'm reminded that the more things change, the more they stay the same. In 2023, the conference is still shining the spotlight on Africa and challenging many of the myths and misconceptions investors have about operating on the continent. We're still debating mining's role in the development of African nations and African people and looking for the most equitable ways of creating wealth and opportunity for all stakeholders. On the commodity front, we're still talking about gold and copper and diamonds. Security and geopolitics have been on the agenda each year, and this year's meeting will be no different. While mining operations in Mali and Burkina Faso have yet to be impacted, the well-being and safety of employees working on Australian-owned projects continues to be of tantamount importance. However, much has also changed. While companies' environmental and social performance have been a discussion point at ADU, the modern day of sustainability and ESG reporting did not exist in 2003, and the conversations have adapted to tackle today's issues. Critical minerals wasn't a top conference topic when we first met in 2003, but in the last decade, the EV revolution has taken hold, and policies such as the US Inflation Reduction Act and the EU Critical Raw Materials Act will likely see Africa in the box seat when it comes to opportunities for mining, processing, and delivery of critical minerals to the US and Europe. Australian companies are big in that space, and we'll hear close to 20 stories, critical mineral stories, this week. Amongst the other prominent stories for the week, foremost will be Sandfire's official opening of the Mateo mine only last week. And that was attended by our guest of honour. The new wave of mines across the continent includes West African Resources mine in Burkina Faso and Tieto Gold's project in Côte d'Ivoire. Add to those success stories, others getting very close to the starting line. Tanzania has fairly and squarely reopened its doors for Australian investment, and we look forward to hearing from the Director General of the Mines Department. The revised mining policy in Tanzania has resulted in a raft of Australian companies moving quickly towards commissioning and production. We also look forward, as I mentioned, to hearing from the WA Mines Minister and Energy Minister shortly, and we look forward to hearing from the Federal Mines and Energy Minister, Madeleine King, on Friday. Also, from Deputy Foreign Affairs Minister, Tim Watts, will be with us as well. So we've got a very busy schedule on and off the stage, with a long list of side events and seminars across the ADU campus. As with all our conferences, we encourage everyone to spend as much time as you can on site, where you can meet up with friends, old and new, and talk and do business. It is now my pleasure to introduce His Excellency Dr. Mokgweetsi Eric Keabetswe Masisi, the President of Botswana. His Excellency was sworn in on the 1st of November 2019 for a 5-year substantive term, following his party, the BDP's victory in the general elections in October that year. President Masisi succeeded former President His Excellency Dr. Seretse Ian Khama, on the 1st of April at the conclusion of the President's 2 terms in office. His Excellency was Vice President of Botswana from 2014 to 2018, and in that role he oversaw many government programs as being head of the National Assembly. The President also served as an MP during this time and was heavily involved in social and livelihood initiatives. There were also earlier years spent when His Excellency worked in the education system, including time as an education officer with UNICEF. The President also worked in other roles to contribute towards Botswana's development agenda, including time spent with NGOs and other platforms. Many of these programs that have contributed to Botswana being the great country that it is today. We're very fortunate, extremely fortunate, to have the President join us today at Africa Down Under to deliver a keynote address. And I'd ask you to make the President, His Excellency, very welcome today.
Thank you very much. Kindly take your seats. Conveners of the conference, Mr. Bill Rippard, Executive Chairman of PADA Media and Team, Honorable Bill Johnston, MLA, Minister of Mines and Petroleum, Energy, Hydrogen Industry, Industrial Relations of Western Australia, Honourable Ministers from across the continent of Africa, including my own, and from Australia, Your Excellencies, Ambassadors and High Commissioners here present, Captains of Industry, Chief Executive Officers, distinguished delegates, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning. It is indeed an honour for me to have been invited to address this important conference. As many of you may be aware, this conference is the leading forum for Australian African businesses and government relations, which was first launched to raise the awareness of Australia's interests in the African mining and energy sectors. Distinguished guests, the Republic of Botswana is a resource-rich Southern African country with a credible record of prudent mineral exploration and exploitation. As Botswana, we recognize the importance of good governance and sound economic policies, underpinned by our respect for democratic principles and the rule of law. Botswana's mining history bears testimony to the sector's contribution to our socio-economic development. Like other African countries, we recognize the significant role played by national and international investors in the mining sector. We would not be where we are today as a country had it not been for our successful partnerships with multinational corporations, which have helped us to maximize output in our mineral value chain development. In any case, it has been proven over the years that the mining industry operates better and is more rewarding on a global scale where the investment landscape has proven to be conducive. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, mining contributes considerably to our exports value, government revenue, and our gross domestic product. Furthermore, the industry provides the much-needed employment for our citizens. It is for these reasons that the government of Botswana is determined to constantly improve our minerals policy, legislation, and operational processes so as to ensure that our country remains the investor's destination of choice. To this end, the Botswana Parliament adopted the Botswana's mineral policy in March 2022, which is intended to guide the development and growth of the mineral sector in Botswana. The key objectives of the policy include: 1, maximization of economic benefits to the nation while enabling private investors to earn competitive returns. 2, creation of a competitive environment to stimulate private sector investment in mineral development. And 3, improved linkages with the wider economy, and 4, generation of local employment opportunities. Distinguished delegates, Ladies and gentlemen, it is also worth noting that Botswana's fiscal regime for non-diamond minerals is predictable, has low royalty rates, a competitive low tax rate, and capital redemption. In totality, our fiscal regime is highly attractive, and it imposes a low fiscal burden on the investor. Furthermore, the Fraser Index of Best Practices Mineral Potential Index, BPMPI, I guess you all know what that means, which measures the mineral potential of different jurisdictions, has moved Botswana's BPMPI ranking from a low score of 31% in 2021 to 73% in 2022. This surge in rankings shows that Botswana's policies, laws, and prospectively landscape are viewed favorably as being investor-friendly by the global community. The prospectively ratings and ability to attract exploration capital from global markets by any country are underpinned by the country's political and investment risk landscape. Botswana has, therefore, ensured over the years that our exploration and mining landscape is stable, is well codified, and supported by fair and transparent statutes, rules, and regulations, as well as processes that are easy to comply with by all parties. Furthermore, the Fraser's Rankings for Investment Attractiveness Index, AIAI, and the Policy Perception Index, PPI, also show Botswana as being among the well-performing jurisdictions globally, rated at 70% in terms of its attractiveness and policies, compared to 80% rating by the best global mining jurisdictions like Canada and, yes, Australia. In an effort to facilitate diversification of Botswana's mineral portfolio, the government has embarked on a number of projects to identify the potential for mineral resources and to digitize and make geoscience information readily available to private investors in an effort to encourage prospecting for metals. The government, through the work assigned to the Botswana Geoscience Institute, continues to promote and stimulate mineral exploration activity that will lead to new discoveries. The BGI, that's the Botswana Geoscience Institute, continues to provide knowledge on mineral occurrences, thus improving the country's prospectively rankings. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Botswana's geological environment is conducive for a variety of metals. Central to the exploration and mapping drive is the search for new mineral commodities, in particular rare earth elements and battery metals. Assessment of these critical elements has taken center stage throughout the country, focusing on the prospective granitic and peralkaline environment. As a result, evidence of several mineral occurrences in different parts of Botswana has been found. More recently, the Botswana Geoscience Institute has embarked on aggressive systematic exploration programs to raise the current level of prospectivity through a phased countrywide mapping to improve exploration coverage. Historically, mapping has been concentrated in the eastern part of Botswana, which represent only 30% of the country. Approximately 25% of Botswana's land area constitutes current mining and mineral beneficiation activity. The rest of the country, which is mainly covered by the Kalahari Desert, constitutes significant and unexplored potential for mineral prospects, which can drive future mineral investment and stimulate significant economic growth. The government of Botswana in November 2022 launched the National Integrated Geoscience Information System, NIGIS, a landmark project that will take mining and mineral exploration in Botswana to new heights as it opens up our mineral resources, potential, and mineral productivity to the world. The NIGIS has, as part of its functionalities, a mining cadastral system which is used for the management of mineral concessions which comprise prospecting and mining licenses. The mining cadastral system has improved operational efficiencies and productivity, as well as improved transparency, thus enforcing and enhancing good governance in the process. This development is in tandem with our national vision and goals, which are to facilitate effective information management systems and information dissemination to potential global investors, as well as transformation to a knowledge-based economy. The pre-competition data that is available at BGI includes exploration reports from private companies, core sheds, geochemistry, and borehole data to augment geological mapping. This further supports our belief that Botswana possesses significant potential for future mineral discoveries. However, capital funding issues for furthering exploration business has and continues to impede the realization of this potential and the growth of the mineral sector to its full potential. This is generally a global problem and is not unique to Botswana. We believe, therefore, that global partnerships and collaborations for public and private sector participation will assist our government to attract and retain capital investment in our mining industry. Ladies and gentlemen, please note that Botswana has over the years issued prospecting license to 14 Australian companies, one of which is at an advanced prospecting stage and another one at the mining stage. The mineral commodities being prospected for by these companies are base metals, coal bed methane, rare earth, and uranium, which is what our economy wants to pursue in our effort to diversify the sector. The Northwest Copper Belt, northwestern Botswana, that is, which stretches from the Northwest District, the Khansi District, in Botswana, continues to attract a lot of interest, with various companies, including Australian entities, actively engaging in exploration. Prospecting activities in the area have led to the opening of Cobre copper mining, of copper silver mining company operations in the Northwest District, which produced its first ore in June 2021. It was followed quite quickly by Sandfire Resources, which is located in the Khansi District and started production in May 2023, which I had the honor to officially open on the 9th of August 2023. Sandfire Resources is the only Australian company currently mining in Botswana. They have subcontracted another Australian company, Ausdrill Pty Ltd, for contract mining, and they have employed over 1,005 employees, of which 93.8% are citizens of my country. Another Australian company, Barminco Pty Ltd, is subcontracted by Cobre Copper Mine, a Canadian company which employs 1,463 employees, 86 of whom are citizens of Botswana. Ladies and gentlemen, we are delighted to be doing business with Australian mining and exploration companies. And I'd like to take this opportunity to invite more of you, Aussie companies, to come to Botswana. In conclusion, distinguished guests, I wish to once more encourage all of you to consider Botswana as your next investment destination in the mineral sector. As I already mentioned before, Botswana stands ready to welcome you with our investor-friendly business environment supported by favorable laws and policies, not to mention our fiscal regime. Please come and join us as we continue to expand Botswana's mineral portfolio going into the future. I wish you all a very successful and economically rewarding conference. So thank you.
Wow. Well, thank you, sir. That was a very inspiring number of words, and I'm sure there will be companies looking to come to Botswana sooner rather than later. But again, ladies and gentlemen, would we please give a vote of thanks to His Excellency, the President. I'd now like to pass on to my colleague Dominic Piper, who's editor of Pay Dirt and Gold Mining Journal, to move on with the next part of the session.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Bill. Thank you, Your Excellency, for a very inspiring address. At Pay Dirt, we've visited Botswana many times, right from the very start of the Mateo discovery all the way through, and I had the privilege of being there in February myself, and Like in so many African nations, we're always made welcome when we come to Botswana. So thank you again. Thank you, distinguished guests, as Bill has, our protocol observed, as Bill has already mentioned. We're very excited to welcome another really good friend of ours, the Honourable Bill Johnston, MLA, Minister for Mines and Petroleum, Energy, Hydrogen Industry, Industrial Relations of the Government of Western Australia. Minister Johnston has been a minister in the McGowan Labour government since its election in March 2017, and has previously been Minister for Commerce, Electoral Affairs, Asian Engagement and Corrective Services. So far, his achievements include cutting red tape for the mining industry, introducing the Work Health and Safety Bill, including industrial manslaughter provisions, and assisting in revolutionising Western Australia's energy system. In opposition, he served as Shadow Minister for State Development and Energy from 2012 and Shadow Minister for Mines and Petroleum from 2013. He was a member of the Economic and Industry Standing Committee and a Deputy Chair of the Inquiry into Domestic Gas Prices from 2010 to 2011. Prior to entering Parliament, Minister Johnston was State Secretary for the WA Labour Party from 2001 until 2008, with responsibility for all state and federal election campaigns. Minister.
Well, thanks very much. I'm very pleased to be back here at Africa Down Under. And of course, I want to begin by acknowledging that we meet on the traditional lands of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and particularly acknowledge His Excellency Dr. Keabetswe as President of Botswana, and so pleased that you were able to join us here in Perth, and that you've taken time out of your undoubtedly busy schedule to pay respect to us here by joining us at this important event. And of course, I also want to acknowledge Bill Repard, a good friend of the mining industry here in Western Australia and Chairman of Pay Dirt Media. I want to acknowledge my parliamentary colleague, the Honourable Ayor Mokgweetsi, MLC, the member for North Metropolitan Region, the first ethnic person with an background of African ethnicity to be elected to the West Australian Parliament. We're very proud that she's a Labor member joining the governing party here in Western Australia. And of course the Mayor of the City of Perth, Basil Zemplis. But I also want to welcome, as I understand, the many ministers and delegations from Africa that are joining us for this important conference over the next few days. I understand there are more than 12 delegations from African nations with us. And of course, I understand too that there's 6 of the Australian head of missions from Africa here at the conference. So just to say that all protocols observed, and I'll move on. So for 20 years, Africa Down Under has demonstrated the strength of Western Australia's enduring partnership with Africa and our desire to continue to build a strong, mutually beneficial relationship with African nations. Western Australia's resource sector has been through many changes over the last 2 decades. So I just want to set a little bit of a scene for some stats about the industry to show how it's changed over that period of time. Western Australia is actually one of the fastest growing economies in the developed world. If our average gross state product is growing at 4%, well above our national average of 2.7%. We've actually had 14 continuous quarters of increased investment spending in the West Australian mineral and petroleum sector. And last year, this continued with almost $26 billion invested into the state of Western Australia. And the growth in our resource sector has been truly phenomenal. 20 years ago, Western Australia's resource sector was worth $27.5 billion. Last year, sales of mining and petroleum products recorded $246 billion. That's an increase of, thank you, an increase of $200 billion in sales in 20 years. But we're also looking at the future. We want to remain globally competitive. We need to make sure we're mining smarter. And this has driven a very sophisticated technological solutions to mining activities here in Western Australia. And I always say that our mining industry is a technological story. It's about applying technology to solve problems. We're committed to building future opportunities in our mining industry here in Western Australia, particularly in critical minerals. We want to be recognised as a leader in the sustainable development of our outstanding natural resources. And this clearly aligns with the Cook Government's strategy of growing the state in our investment environment to be seen as a global leader in ESG opportunities. The government's future battery and critical minerals industry strategy outlines our vision to grow the state's participation in the global battery and critical minerals value chain to help increase value-added manufacturing here in Western Australia. The global demand for minerals required for the development of clean energy technologies is forecast to double or even quadruple by 2040. By 2030, electric vehicles will represent more than 60% of vehicles sold globally, and by 2040, the demand for battery minerals such as lithium is forecast to increase by 40 times the 2020 level. Over the same period, the demand for cobalt, graphite and other materials could arise by 20 times, with rare earth elements potentially increasing by up to 7 times. Western Australia is leading the charge as the first Australian jurisdiction to commence commercial production of battery-grade lithium hydroxide as well as nickel sulphate. Our state is the only jurisdiction in the world to offer processed rare earths outside of China, with 2 plants under construction here in Western Australia. But we know that decarbonisation remains a critical issue with industries and a government across the world seeking to reduce carbon emissions. The Cook Government is committed to achieving net zero emissions by 2050. We're investing in decarbonisation in several ways. This year we announced a $40 million sustainable geoscience investment package, and I note His Excellency's comments around geoscience investment, so it's clear this is a much needed area of activity. So our $40 million sustainable geoscience investment package included a $16 million boost to the exploration incentive scheme, which ongoing exploration success is critical to a strong industry by discovering the critical minerals required for net zero emissions in the future. The funding will also create a geophysical co-funding program to improve decision-making around land use by excluding ground that shows little prospective value. With the cost of exploration relatively high for most juniors and mid-tier exploration companies, co-funding affords them a larger search space and reduces costs. We're also investing $6.7 million for an industry-ready program, which will fund the creation of data analytical packages for key regions and key commodities. The geo-information and ready-to-apply knowledge products will open up the search space for mineral exploration in a cost-effective and accessible manner. $6.2 million has been allocated for magnetotelluric data acquisition to enable more targeted exploration. The data will be particularly powerful when combined with data from the WA Array project, a statewide passive seismic survey, one of the largest of its kind in the world, which will unlock more of WA's hidden resources. These major geoscience projects build on the strong foundation of our world-leading resource sector, paving the way for growth in a low-carbon future. We're also committed to streamlining approvals processes, where the Cook Government's committed to improving regulations and reducing timeframes for mining applications, although not compromising our environmental and community expectations in any way. Our proposed eligible mining activity framework will see an alternative pathway provided for authorisations for certain mineral ground disturbing activities, helping to improve timeframes for low-risk mining activities. That project will also release resources from low-value activity so that we can allocate more human resources to high-value, more complex approvals. We've also committed $22 million to simplify and drive approvals for green energy projects, including critical minerals applications, through a cross-government green energy approvals team and a green energy expert panel. A green energy major projects group is also being established within the state's Department of Jobs, Tourism, Science and Innovation as a first point of contact to help steer projects and investors through government processes. Over the coming decades, the mining and resource sector will experience unprecedented continuing transformation. There are great economic opportunities for African countries to maintain and build on our partnership from investment by West Australian mining companies. There are also opportunities of employing our state's world-leading mining equipment, technology and services sector, or the MET sector. Western Australian METS companies offer world-class skills that can increase a project's efficiency, manage risk, improve health and safety, reduce maintenance costs and track supply chain activities. Of the top 100 specialist METS companies operating worldwide, 22 are headquartered here in Perth in Western Australia, with another 55 operating here as well, creating an internationally significant METS presence here in Western Australia. They're just a small part of the 27,000 specialised METS companies now operating in Western Australia, building skills and capacity that also helps to diversify our economy. And we want to make sure that we have those resources available to benefit mining activity in Africa. And we also want to emphasise our interest in partnering on skills development. And we would like to explore all opportunities to build capacity, not just in the industrial workforce in African nations, but also in the administrative capacity. We're working with resource companies to ensure the ethical exploitation of resources so that African people can benefit from the resources in Africa. We also hope that we can continue to have strong support from our Commonwealth Government colleagues to ensure that we're able to fully develop our capacity in partnering with African nations for the benefit of African people. So in conclusion, the Cook Government's vision for the resource sector remains future focused. The opportunities for Western Australia and for Africa to grow and diversify our resource sector is immense. We experience a once-in-a-lifetime global demand for critical minerals, which is behind the incredible advancements in mining technology and the global shift to reducing emissions. By working together, sharing our knowledge, sharing skills, developing opportunities for collaboration and cooperation, we can achieve positive and sustainable economic outcomes that will improve the lives of communities here in Western Australia and across the continent of Africa. We're so pleased that so many senior leaders of African nations have joined us here in Perth, and we want to say here at the 21st Africa Down Under Conference how deeply pleased we are that this event happens each year and brings together such a strong group of leaders to ensure that Western Australian mining industry can see the opportunities for developments in Africa. And I want to finish by saying that we're deeply committed as the Government of Western Australia to support the ethical investment by Western Australian companies into Africa. And we are very proud that we've had so many successes in partnership with African communities and that we do see the success of Western Australian companies training local workforces to ensure that the benefits of our mining investments are shared across the community. So thank you all very much for the opportunity to address you here today, and I look forward to meeting you later during the program.
Thank you, Minister Johnston. And as a West Australian myself, it's always inspiring to see the revenues we generate from this remarkable industry. It's very fitting, I think, that we should move on from our two esteemed first presenters and keynote speakers to our first company presentation, because this is a company which was nurtured, and its early expertise was fostered here in Western Australia with a mine here in Western Australia, and now it is applying that expertise and sharing that expertise in Botswana in the shape of the Mateo mine. That company is Sandfire Resources, and I'm privileged to welcome Brendan Harris, who is Managing Director and CEO of Sandfire Resources. Mr. Harris is an experienced mining executive with a broad range of leadership, commercial and technical skills, particularly in the management and operation of a diversified mining business. Before joining Sandfire, Brendan was a member of South 32's senior executive management team after its demerger from BHP in 2015. And he played a key role in the company's establishment as its inaugural Chief Financial Officer. Most recently, he held the role of Chief Human Resources and Commercial Officer at South 32, with responsibility for global commodity marketing, procurement, and human resources. Brendan holds a Bachelor of Science in Geology and Geophysics from Flinders University. Brendan.
Hello and good morning. First and foremost, of course, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners on the land on which we stand, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, as well as the First Nations peoples of the lands in which Sandfire conducts its business. We pay our respects to their elders and leaders, past, present, and emerging. It gives me great honour to welcome His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Botswana, as a special guest of this Africa Down Under conference. His Excellency and his government have played a key role in taking the Mateo copper mine from concept to reality. Without their continued support, we would not have delivered this significant project as efficiently as we have. I would also like to welcome the Botswanan Minister for Minerals and Energy, the Australian Federal Minister for Resources, the Minister for Mines, Petroleum, Energy, Hydrogen and Industrial Relations here in Western Australia, Botswana's High Commissioner to Australia, and of course Australia's High Commissioner to South Africa, Botswana and Namibia, other government ministers and officials, and the conference coordinators, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Having joined Sandfire as its CEO earlier this year, I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to showcase Mateo, our newest modern processing hub located in the central portion of the highly prospective Kalahari Copper Belt in Botswana. It's an incredibly exciting time to be leading Sandfire, as this mine underpins our international growth plans and ambition to be a global copper producer of increasing significance. To bring this to life, I'll share a short video from our team on the ground describing the positive impact Mateo is having within the Hansi region. I'll then conclude with a brief update, allowing time for questions. My recent visit to Botswana for the official opening of our newest mine, Mateo, was one of the most humbling experiences of my career, and a day where we could celebrate the incredible contribution of the team that discovered and developed this wonderful mine. The energy and enthusiasm evident on the day left me with an even greater sense of optimism and a firm belief that Sandfire will be a valued participant and contributor to the local economy for many, many years to come. The approval of the extension to our mining licence that was received shortly thereafter only reinforced this view, as it was the final major permitting milestone for our expansion project that takes Matayo's installed capacity to 5.2 million tonnes per annum and allows mining of the higher grade A4 resource to commence imminently. I'd like to personally thank the Government of Botswana and our host communities for the professional, sophisticated and welcoming business environment they create. Botswana is recognised globally as a world-class, attractive mining jurisdiction with well-developed infrastructure, sound economic growth, a skilled workforce, and critically, a clear and stable regulatory environment. As noted by His Excellency, this view was reflected in the most recent annual survey of mining companies conducted by the Fraser Institute, which ranked Botswana as the #1 destination in Africa for investment attractiveness. And I might add, number 10 in the world, outranking many Australian states, indeed. This supportive backdrop has helped our company make rapid and positive progress. In the past 3.5 years, Matayo has become an important member of the Hansi community. We're providing local jobs and business opportunities, developing local suppliers, and supporting community programs. At the heart of our approach is our community framework, which focuses on 4 pillars: community health, education, women empowerment, and youth development. Some great examples of the difference our mind and people are making includes our investment in what we call the Horticultural Capacity Project, which aims to provide women in Kuke with the tools and resources to grow nutritious food, not only for consumption, but to generate income, provide financial independence, and contribute to the district's food security. At the request of the local community, our team also established 80 solar-powered streetlights in the Kuke village, providing enhanced road safety for everyone. We continue to build local capacity and capability, support local suppliers, and foster a truly inclusive mindset that celebrates the beauty of Botswana, its people, and unique culture. The Matayo project created around 1,900 jobs during construction and will provide full-time employment for around 900 more, with an additional 1,700 jobs created through the broader supply chain and services industries. And I'm pleased to say, as was mentioned, around 95% and a little bit more of our permanent workforce are people from Botswana. Looking ahead, we see significant potential to extend the life of our Matayo mine, given the prospectivity and relatively underexplored nature of the Kalahari Copper Belt. We have a full year of drilling ahead of us, with numerous targets to be tested within the economic trucking distance of Matayo. And as we extend the life of our modern processing hub, we will be even better placed to make a lasting difference in the greater Hansi district and Botswana more broadly. Over its currently estimated 10-year life, Matayo is expected to deliver a significant return to the people of Botswana, with around $600 million to be paid in taxes and royalties, the latter at 3% of copper revenue and 5% of silver. Matayo is also expected to pay around $140 million to the Botswana Power Corporation and $40 million in the form of payroll tax. The Matayo project, Botswana, and the broader Kalahari Copper Belt are now squarely on the radar of the global mining industry, and we are pleased to be ambassadors for the country, as we believe Botswana is a premier investment jurisdiction. As a proud stakeholder of the nation of Botswana, we will continue to work with the local community, business and government to bring the Kalahari to life, turning its burning sand into copper. To the video, please.
everyone, my name is Dale Burgess and I'm the Executive Head of Country for Sandfire Resources here in Botswana. Today I'm situated at Sandfire's newly opened Mateo copper mine, located in the Kalahari copper belt, approximately 70 kilometres from the township of Hunzi. So the Mateo operating hub forms the foundation of Sandfire's long-term plans to mine copper from this jurisdiction within the Kalahari copper belt. Currently, our operations are focusing on the T3 deposit with a rapid expansion to the A4 adjacent our mining operation. Our processing facility here behind me produces a high-grade copper concentrate that is trucked all the way to Walvis Bay in Namibia over approximately 1,000 kilometres. From there, it is shipped to smelters all around the world. The approval of this expansion allows us to schedule in FY25 over 50,000 tonnes of contained copper in our production stream. At Sandfire, we are committed to making long-lasting positive changes for the communities that we operate. Our community relations programs are built around 4 pillars of education, public health, female empowerment and youth development. Sandfire is committed to training, recruiting and developing our local workforce for the betterment of the future of this country. Currently, 97% of our workforce are local Botswana people. I'm a mining professional who's been in the industry for 34 years, both underground and open pit, and I had the opportunity to join Sandfire Resources 2 years ago and to be a part of this exciting operation here in Botswana. So it's incredibly important for the country of Botswana, this mining operation. Annually, through direct royalties and taxes, we'll be contributing over 700 million pula per annum to the economy, and obviously the ongoing direct and indirect jobs. Currently we have 1,500 directly employed people on site, and obviously for every direct job there are 3 or 4 downstream roles as well. So incredibly important for the country.
Timela, my name is Chopos Timela and I'm an exploration geologist with Sandfire Cobre Exploration. I've been part of the project since 2016, and the highlights of my career is being part of the team which discovered T3 and A4. I'm proud to be part of Sandfire because we are looking forward to discover more deposits in the Kalahari belt.
Keabetswe Cecilia Supin. Our approach at Mateo is centered on our community framework, which is designed to deliver lasting socio-economic benefits, focusing on our 4 key pillars: community health, education, women empowerment, and youth development. At Mateo, we are committed to improving people's lives by creating lasting social, environmental, and economic value. And we do this by providing jobs, business opportunities, paying taxes and royalties, developing our very local suppliers and supporting community programs. Sandfire's long-term success depends on our ability to build relationships, of course, with our host communities and related stakeholders. Community support, engagement, trust are central to the sustainability of our business, and we are committed to delivering enduring socio-economic benefits to our host communities.
Thank you, Jan. And again, I'd just like to congratulate the team who developed this mine, but also the people who had the vision to actually move into Botswana and obviously put significant capital to work to the founders of Sandfire. I think you can tell it's a very exciting place for us to be, and the energy and enthusiasm on the ground from all of our people there is absolutely palpable. The successful completion of the Mateo copper mine on time and on budget was clearly our greatest achievement of FY23. First copper concentrate was produced in May, and the rapid ramp up to the circuit's initial design capacity of 3.2 million tonnes per annum is well underway. Across the first 50 days of the new financial year, Mateo operated at an annualised rate of 2.8 million tonnes per annum, so we're getting pretty close, achieved a maximum copper recovery of 95.9%. People in the audience will know that's a very good number. And produced approximately 14,000 tonnes of concentrate with an average copper content of 30%. This is a good concentrate that the world has great demand for. It's still early days, but we couldn't be happier with our new mine's performance, and I'm pleased to say Motheo achieved commercial production in July, some 45 days on from first production. In further good news, we remain on schedule to complete our 5.2 million tonne per annum expansion project at the back end of this calendar year and be ready to deliver high-grade ore from our new A4 open pit from the commencement of FY25. With such strong and steady progress, we are firmly on track, as was mentioned on the video, to produce more than 50,000 tonnes of copper at Motheo in FY25. I'd like to again take this opportunity to thank everyone who's contributed to this wonderful project, particularly our dedicated people, host communities, and the government of Botswana. The mining industry remains a vital cog in Botswana's growing economy, generating around 20% of GDP, with copper an increasingly important contributor. Copper is powering decarbonisation efforts across the world, and it's this growth in supply that will support the green energy transition. It's a privilege to be a valued partner in Botswana, and we will continue to work closely with our host communities and government to ensure we ultimately leave a meaningful net benefit. It's been a pleasure to share our wonderful experience in Botswana with you. Please take the opportunity across the coming days to meet with our delegation from Botswana at booth 23. Stay safe and enjoy the conference. Thank you.
Well, Brendan, thank you very much. And just to reiterate, one of the most inspiring stories in the Australian-African scene at the moment, and we've got the privilege of Julian Hanna, the CEO of the company that originally found the T3 and Motheo project. And it was also exciting to see my good friend Cecilia on the video there. I can vouch for a brilliant community relations. We've done a project together to supply football equipment to junior clubs in the Hansi area, so I'm very proud to see our local football club being represented there as well. Our next speaker is Adam Woolridge, also an explorer in Botswana. He's the CEO of Cobre. Adam is a distinguished geophysicist and geologist with an impressive career spanning more than 25 years. As a founding partner and CEO of KLM, Adam has been instrumental in the development of Cobre's exploration projects for the past 5 years. He has extensive experience across Africa, the Middle East, and Europe, and has excelled in exploration management and consulting roles, specializing in the large-scale, multidisciplinary target generation across various deposit types. 2004, he established Exponential Consulting and co-founded New Resolution Geophysics, an airborne geophysics survey company. Adam's expertise extends to project generation in Africa and Southeast Europe as a founding partner of both KML and Vardar Metals. He holds a bachelor's and honours degrees in geology and geophysics, is a registered professional scientist, and a respected member of the ASEG community. Adam.
Thank you. This short video summarizes our vision for our copper exploration. In today's talk, I'm really going to focus in on our Botswana Kalahari copper-based project. We're going to talk a little bit about the exploration we're doing, and we're also going to focus in a little bit on our new in situ copper opportunity, where we have potential to explore a really large-scale, moderate-grade opportunity in our Ngami project. Before I dive into the Kalahari Copper Belt, I have a few overview slides which I'll run through quickly, and then we can carry on. There we go. Quickly on the corporate snapshot, I guess the important thing is we're still well funded. We have funds available for the rest of our exploration this year. And again, we're backed by a strong board, lots of experience in copper exploration and mining. And just my last overview slide, Cobre also has other assets. We have a small resource in WA, and we also have an active investment in Armada, in the nickel copper project in Gabon, and the exciting new nickel copper project in Zimbabwe, which will be discussed a bit later on in the conference. Diving into the Kalahari Copper Belt, we've heard quite a lot about it already this morning. I think the real exciting part of the belt is having seen it move from an exploration play over the years into a producing copper district. It still remains one of the most prospective areas for undiscovered sedimentary hosted copper deposits. And it's really, having worked there for several decades, been fantastic to see the belt move from this exploration into producing copper region. But most importantly, it's really only in the last decade or two that we've seen a dramatic increase in the number of deposits that have been discovered. And this has been driven largely by an improvement in our understanding of the geology and also improvements in geophysical methods that have been used to uncover the new deposits under the sand covers of this region. Our focus has really been in the Botswana portion of the Kalahari Copper Belt. Of course, Botswana is a fantastic Tier 1 jurisdiction for mining investment, as we've heard so much this morning. We're really excited to be working in the country. So looking at where our projects are held, we have 5 large projects in Botswana. We selected the ground really to target a long strike from known deposits, but also around new producing mines in Botswana. And most importantly, we put a lot of effort into trying to secure our tenements and projects along the basin margins where you would typically expect your best sedimentary copper deposits to occur. And it's really in this area that we'll focus today's talk. So over the last year or so, we've put a lot of effort into working up this relatively unexplored northern basin margin of the Kalahari Copper Belt. From a geological point of view, it's always stood out as a priority area for us. It has all the key ingredients for making a discovery in the Kalahari Copper Belt. You're right on the margin. You've got strong evidence for intrabasal high, big crustal scale structures, which is what you'd want to kind of drive in your copper-bearing fluids into the area. The cover's a lot shallower than was originally anticipated. Original mapping had the cover looking a lot thicker, but we've actually got outcrop in the middle of our Kitliana West project and cover varying between, probably an average between 30 and 40 meters in that area. Most importantly, though, it's been over the last year that we could take and prove up these geological concepts by drilling both in Ngami and Kitliana West and prove that the area is well endowed with copper. And this was a really big milestone for us. We knew we had all the right geological criteria. Now we've been able to prove that we have copper in the system, and this takes us a long way forward on our exploration journey. Before I look at our Ngami project, where most of our work's been done, I'd just like to touch on our ongoing exploration program on our Kitliana West project. In this area, we've had a 12,000 meter shallow RC program running for the last 3 or 4 months. The program's really designed at scout drilling and taking a bedrock sample for a number of targets across this extensive area. Just to give you an idea of scale, it's more than 60 kilometers to cross this license. So we wanted to get a first pass estimate of what sort of targets we could be looking at, and we've been absolutely delighted with where those results have led us. For example, we've already identified our Clo target up on the north of Kitliana West, which has an extent of about 2 by 1 kilometers of consistently anomalous copper at the base of the Kalahari, with some copper mineralization evident in the upper portions of the bedrock. This target would present a typical kind of fold and shear system, probably has some similarities to the style of mineralization that we saw in Sandfire's project. But in addition to that, we've got other targets to look at. Along this really well-defined intrabasinal high, you can see we're getting copper anomalies on the side, and that really speaks to looking at fold closures where we would expect mineralization to be upgraded. And then very interestingly, we've also got on-lap targets onto the basement that starts to sort of bring in some similarities to the kind of setting that you would be looking at if you were in the Domes region of Zambia, for example. So a whole variety of targets coming together here. These results are going to be brought together with our ongoing soil sampling programs and airborne gravity gradient data that's currently been flown to generate a series of new priority targets for diamond drilling early next year. So we still have active exploration going on here, but at the same time, we spent quite a bit of time reviewing the results for our Ngami project. Ngami has been our real focus for the last year. We started drilling in mid last year, and pretty much off the bat, we were quite fortunate to have really encouraging copper intersections coming out of this project. Particularly towards the end of last year, we had a couple of high-grade intersections come off the project, and it was with those results that we went into our drill campaign this year, really looking to see the same sort of deposit styles that you would see elsewhere in the Kalahari Copper Belt. For those, you would normally see a high-grade zone surrounded by a moderate-grade halo of mineralization, and then that would drop off to almost background values, which you would see throughout the Kalahari Copper Belt. Now, when we started drilling this year, to our surprise, pretty much every hole we put in intersected fairly thick, moderate-grade mineralization. Furthermore, all of this mineralization was chalcocite dominant with a smaller oxide component. So it actually, rather than seeing your traditional kind of bornite vein-hosted mineralization, you're seeing chalcocite, it's fine-grained and it's hosted on fractures. But importantly, it extends for tens of kilometers. So we're never going back to background. And this started making us think a little bit laterally. Perhaps we shouldn't just be looking for the high-grade zones in our Ngami project, but we should also start looking at this project more as a large-scale, moderate-grade target. And we went through looking at different methods in which we could exploit this and really capitalize on the unusual mineralization. And this led us down the road to start exploring an in-situ leach operation, which we believe would be probably the ideal method here. Where in-situ leach methods are applicable and viable, they provide a low capex, low opex, really environmentally friendly way of mining. But it's not used extensively because your ore body needs to satisfy very unique conditions. And I'll go through some of those unique conditions because I think it's quite important to understand our thinking and how we arrived here. Obviously, the mineralization has to be leachable. We've done the MET tests and proven this is the case. We've also proven that we can beneficiate copper with a relatively low acid consumption. The next step is, all our mineralization is hosted in fractures and cleavages, so it makes it quite easy to get a leaching fluid in proximity to the mineralization. The second key variable is any ore body that you're looking at has to actually be below the water table, and now you can already see you're precluding most ore bodies from being viable for this method. Well, fortunately, we seem to be in a bit of a Goldilocks zone with respect to our water table. Our water table's below the Kalahari, so that if you were to introduce a leach, it can be controlled laterally. But importantly, most of our ore body is actually below the water table as well. Then this leads into the key aspect. You have to be able to, you have to have a natural developed fracture architecture running parallel to mineralization so you can get any fluid into your ore body itself. And you have to have some kind of boundary conditions so that you control where that fluid would run. Now, we've spent quite a bit of time modeling up the fracture zones and trying to get a handle on this from a hydrogeological point of view. Just to give you an idea, all the geology is almost vertically dipping. And you have very well-developed fracture zones associated directly above the redox contact where the mineralization occurs. But also, very importantly, on both sides, both in the footwall and hanging wall, you have very competent metaquartzite units which would provide seals. So the idea is then to inject into your mineralized zone, and you've got a long channel where your fluid can be focused. Just to give you an idea, this is a fracture model that we've developed. You can see the fractures are laterally continuous, and the same sort of fracture patterns are repeated in hole after hole as you move along the contact. Quite importantly, we seem to be seeing better fracture development where there's higher grades of mineralization as well. So this really led us to undertake a fairly extensive modeling exercise. We wanted to get an idea of the potential scale of this project. And based on exploration category modeling, which is driven almost entirely from drill data, we can comfortably say that we're looking at a scale of project of over 100 million tonnes with grades in the order of 0.5%. Importantly, we've only explored half the contact, so there's plenty of room to further upscale this. So now you can start to look at this project as being a significant scale opportunity, and really if we can prove and get this in situ copper method to work successfully, it has an enormous upside as well. For our next steps, we've actually got a really nicely stage-gated process, and this allows us to control our use of funds and to work through and de-risk both our exploration and ISR development projects very carefully. On the in situ leach side, the next step is to do pump testing, which will basically prove our hydrogeological models. It will establish the fluid conductivity along the pathways parallel to the mineralization. It will also give us a handle of what sort of injection recovery well spacing we would need to make an operation viable. We've got further met testing ongoing. We're looking at improving our copper recoveries with further met testing, and then that will lead into a second stage of met testing where we actually start to simulate the in-situ environment itself. Once we've successfully proven these two steps, which will happen in Q4 of this year, we'll be able to advance at least the yellow category that I illustrated in the previous slide into JORC category. That's actually a relatively small program. It would only be about 9,000 meters of drilling, but that puts you in a perfect stage to actually start looking at a follow-on acid test, which would lead you into a scoping study. So a really nicely controlled, stage-gated approach on the in-situ development side. At the same time, we have ongoing exploration where we're looking for high-grade further high-grade deposits in the district. I think this is a good place for me to stop, and I'd just like to play out with a short video summarizing our thinking and ideas for how this in-situ operation could work. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Adam, and thank you for a great presentation, and hopefully you can replicate the success we've seen elsewhere in Botswana. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for our opening session of Africa Down Under 2023. Can I just ask you, first of all, to thank all of our speakers on today's program, and then join me in thanking, in particular, His Excellency Dr. Mokgweetsi Eric Keabetswe Masisi, President of the Republic of Botswana. Thank you again, Your Excellency. His Excellency will now be departing, so if you could all please rise just to farewell him. Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And after a rather hectic start to the morning and a fantastic opening session, I think we've all earned a cup of tea. Morning tea is sponsored by Solar Century Africa, so please take some time to get some refreshments. We'll be starting the next session very shortly, in 5 or 10 minutes. And there also is a seminar being held by World Travel Protection over the road in the Silver Room at the Novotel. All delegates are welcome. Thank you very much. Hello.